people need connection, and in a way, books can allow that, can facilitate connection in a way, can give something to talk about in those times where maybe parents don't know how quite to deliver support. It's kind of, it gives them something that you can bond over and you can read together, and it can become an experience, not just a book.
Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Shafer of Talks with Dr. Shafer. I'm a physician, mom, life coach, musician, author, publisher, and I am passionate about helping others reclaim their stories so they can build their most beautiful future. And today, storytellers, I am so excited to have such an inspiring and brilliant guest on our show, coming all the way from Sydney, Australia. Orlanda Bettison is a mother of two. She is a primary school teacher with a degree in psychology, and she has set out to promote children's mental health awareness and well-being through her 4 books. And I think a 5th one's coming, and hopefully we're going to hear about that today too, as well as other activities for children. Orlanda is the author of My Brain is a Home, My Breath, My Mindful Brain, and My Brain First Aid. As we said, more books coming, more inspiration coming, and more ways for us to connect with our children where they are and learn about their life experience. Orlanda, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. Such a lovely introduction.
Well, I have been just so excited to meet with you and have you on the show. I get really excited. So I know social media gets a really bad rap for being a place that we spend our time and we maybe don't have the best influences. But I felt so blessed to come across your shorts, your reels on Instagram. And I was just so inspired by your mission and what you are doing with your books to really promote mental health awareness in such a way that it's connecting not only with kids, but with parents, because so often what I experience as a neurologist with also a background in psychology and the mental health struggles that we experience in our families as well. A really big piece is understanding the connection, not only between mental health struggles and concerns of our kids, but how we're interplaying. And instead of focusing so much on fixing, a lot of times we get into this fixing attitude with our kids. We actually can have so many opportunities to investigate how we are showing up for our kids and think, are there better ways? So tell me, what inspired you first off to write your books?
Yeah, well, I guess it was kind of a very authentic experience. So, having the teaching aspect, I've kind of seen a lot of mental health issues in the classroom. I've seen a lot of parents struggling how to manage different things. And then it was kind of confounded by my own mental health struggles. After having my second son, I had a really serious bout of postnatal anxiety and depression. And so having that knowledge base of psychology early, but then actually going through a mental health battle and having to actually apply those skills and thinking, okay, if I was to break this down into the nuts and bolts, what skills actually facilitate mental health and mental well-being and being able to look after yourself. And I suppose that's what I wanted to give children. I wanted to give them those tools before they get to that place where, they're needing to go to therapy, that those tools are embedded in their upbringing. I think so many of us adults wind up in therapy because we never had access to those tools, or it wasn't spoken about, or there was a big sort of, there's only recently been a shift, I think, to really talking about mental health and it being an accepted part of general well-being. So I think a lot of us adults didn't learn these skills until we had our own troubles and we were in therapy rooms ourselves. So I think it's kind of wanting to bridge that gap. And just like we teach kids about physical health and nutrition and diet, it's wanting to teach them, okay, mental health's important. That's how we live. That's where we live in our brains. And so how do we set up healthy minds to grow up and navigate the world?
Absolutely. And I really appreciate a word that you used that you don't necessarily hear as often, but it really rang true for me when you described your own mental health battle. And then you went on to discuss the different experience we can have if we are armed differently, if we have that training early in life to face those struggles. Because if you already have the tools on board, it may be less of a fight. It may be less of a battle, and it may be more of a, I know what to do. And this is going to be really challenging. But I also know, despite the challenge, that I have the tools. It's like being out in the ocean in a rowboat and not having any oars. It's going to be a lot tougher.
And someone that actually just kind of made me think of something. I remember seeing a quote saying, we don't teach children how to swim when they're drowning, right? You teach them
Mm.
how to swim before to prevent drowning. So it's that whole idea of teaching those skills when kids are calm so that when they're in trouble, they can draw upon them. And I just think in my own experience with my own children, with the children I teach, it just has such a huge impact. That early intervention really does act as a preventative measure.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I know you have been so active in getting your books into schools, into therapy offices, occupational therapy, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And I think it's really interesting to reflect on myself. I have a book about emotional regulation as well that I've been on a book tour for, and I've had the opportunity to do readings in schools. And it's been with preschool to kindergarten students on average. And the thing that I think most of us adults don't fully appreciate is how receptive children are for these lessons and how much they get it. And I think a lot of the ways that we stumble in our delivery of these tools is we don't necessarily package them in ways that they can really be fully appreciated. But storytelling is such a powerful way to do just that.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And like you say, it's also sometimes it's not coming just from mum and dad, it's coming from school, it's coming from these different avenues that it's not packaged in a way of being taught or trying to, being told how to do things that sometimes I think kids resist when it's mum and dad telling you this is what you should do to cope, where it's delivered in a story, like you say. Um, they just absorb it as part of that's how life is, It's okay to have bad
Mm.
emotions. I know growing up for me, I was very much taught to suppress, and you express your happy emotions and you should be grateful. And um, I think it took me a long time to learn that it's okay to have negative emotions. All emotions are a normal part of life. And I think if you can learn that early, you just move through emotions much easier,
Mm.
and accept the ups and downs and apply strategies where need be. And yeah, for sure, like you say, kids are just little sponges. I know at the school I teach, we've been using the My Brain books, and some of the kids will even go home and tell their parents like, "Oh, mum and dad, your amygdala's barking." So they take it straight away and they apply it, which is yeah, it's lovely, and it just shows how powerful kind of those early experiences can
Children are so brilliant and they're really ready to, like you said, as a sponge, absorb. And we can take this opportunity. They're exposed to so many different media influences that maybe aren't necessarily going to arm them with the tools. And so, okay, we can't necessarily keep the whole world out. We can do our best with, okay, we're not doing YouTube, or we only do it with these settings and it's always monitored. We can try our very best. But at the end of the day, our children are going to be living in this world. They're going to be observing things, experiencing things, and we can arm them with tools to cope. We can't just necessarily keep the world at bay. Now,
yes.
starting with your first book, My Brain is a Home, what a lovely title. What inspired you to set about framing the book in that way?
Yeah, well, I guess it was kind of trying to explain brain anatomy and that sort of, where does anxiety come from? And what is anxiety? Like, largely, anxiety is thoughts coupled with a feeling in our body. And it's trying to kind of frame that in a way that kids can understand that, you have these different negative thoughts in your brain, but that's just coming from one side of your brain. And you can use this other more rational side of your brain to calm that guard dog down. Like I might even get just a little illustration from the book. So it's kind of trying to, I remember sitting in my own therapy room and having a guided sort of activity with my psychologist where we kind of spoke to these different sides of myself, which we all have. You know, we have our rational thinking side, our emotional side, and just coming to the acceptance that all of those parts are trying to protect me, and I don't need to try
Mm.
and shut one off or be um, angry towards one. So that's kind of the idea. It's trying to teach kids that this guard dog, our little anxiety provoking part of our brain, it's just trying to keep us safe. So it alerts us to every possible danger. And yes, it's useful sometimes, but it's not always useful. And that's where we use like our wise brain to clarify, you know, should I be worried about this problem? Is this part of my brain telling me a legitimate problem here? Or is this something I can rationalize and problem solve using different strategies? And then the idea of having like a pet hippo in the home, and that's because it's called the hippocampus. And he can't learn when it's too noisy, you know? So when our brains are full of these worried thoughts, we can't learn because the house or the household is too noisy. Um, and I guess even the idea of your brain being a home, to me, you know, our experience in life is largely how we think about things in our brain. So that is where we
Mm.
live as a metaphor, I suppose. So it kind of just it tied it all together nicely for me, and it made sense. And I think kids can understand a home because they understand dynamics of a home. I mean, it's a strange home with run by a professor with a guard dog and a hippo, but you know, they can still understand that it's a home. Um, yeah, and I just felt it was something that kids can relate to. It's visual and it's easy to understand. So it just really, yeah, it just came together quite organically. And I just kind of tested little things in the classroom with my own kids. And it was kind of this holistic process that kind of accumulated into that book.
It's beautiful. I love the examples, and they're in characters that can connect with the children. Children are so primed to connect with this animals, and what kid doesn't like to pretend that a part of them is an animal, right? I mean,
Yeah,
how many
yeah,
times on recess are the kids pretending to be cats or dogs, and one will say, no, I'm not playing that animal because that's not the kind of animal I am. You know, they really can connect with this. And I think it's so empowering because many of us, even into adulthood, can feel that our emotions are in control of us and that they are something that is externally happening to us.
yes,
I'm
yeah,
upset because you did this to me. Yes, someone may have done something to you that triggered your nervous system, the various parts of your nervous system. And the empowering part is once you've identified those responses, the parts of your brain that might be triggered, and you've done that mindful approach to figuring out, okay, let's think, how did it go when I let the guard dog take over in a situation where I didn't need the guard dog, right?
yes, yeah,
How, how did it go when I allowed anger to be the dynamic response I had when that really wasn't serving me, right? Because yes, that person may have done something that provoked a sensation of anger in me, but I'm empowered to make choices about which part of my brain I can really use, what resources I can use to help me respond in a way that honors my feelings, but also keeps me safe and helps me stay in a state that is more regulated. I
yes.
love the imagery. Now, what kind of questions do you find that children have when you're showing them this picture of a brain and they've never seen this before and they're thinking, that's what's inside my head?
Do you know what's cute is so many kids say, do I actually have a dog in my head? And I say, oh no, you know, it's not a dog, but it's a part that acts like your guard dog. And that just shows even how much of a sponge kids are, that if you told them, well, there was a dog in their brain, they'd start to believe it, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but they love it. They love the visual colors, I think, which kind of links to those zones of regulations that often psychologists and counselors do use. I think they like that visual side, and they'll often say, oh, I felt red when this, or oh, I've been blue before, and they can even take that on in the way that they start talking about their emotions, which is lovely. um, but yeah, they're actually really quick to take on those parts, like you say, because they're so relatable. Even in the classroom last year, one of the classes that we'd run the books with, someone said one of the children were kind of really overwhelmed and having a bit of a meltdown, and they said, you know, whatever the name was, that's just your guard dog, but your hippo can't learn if you don't learn to calm it down. So they really take them on, and it's just, yeah, it's just an accessible way, and I think they are so open to it, and they actually enjoy thinking about the brain. Some people have kind of said, oh, children don't need to know this at that young age, but they're actually really capable and they enjoy that knowledge. Even using the word amygdala, a lot of kids will choose to use amygdala on top of, instead of guard dog, because they actually enjoy the knowledge as well. It's fun for them.
Oh, of course. It's kind of like something as simple as when you empower your child to help you cook dinner. They're
Yes,
more
yeah,
likely to eat that dinner because they made it, right? They have that pride. They want to be a part of their own life and your life. And when they understand their emotions, they're not just, it's almost like you go from being a passenger in your life to being in the driver's seat. And what kid does not want to be in the driver's
yes,
seat? I think
yeah,
that that drive for autonomy, it starts so early in life. And we have so few opportunities to give it sometimes, it
yes,
seems.
yeah.
So this is a great way to give that opportunity to really embrace their autonomy and practice making those choices and practice emotional regulation because they can make really big steps in their day to day out. Something you said really resonated with me about emotional regulation and about what children believe. Because when we as the trusted adults or the caregivers in a child's life, what we tell them, they really internalize. And I really appreciate you saying, hey, you can learn this and you can have control over your responses and you can learn to manage your emotions and you can learn about what your brain looks like, acts like, what these emotions feel like.
A
Good.
big part as well is just embracing that all emotions are fine. There aren't good
Yeah.
emotions, there aren't bad emotions. They're all just information and they're all feeding us
Mm-hmm.
information, and then we choose how to deal with it. Um, I think a lot of mental health issues later in life come from people suppressing different parts of themselves, not accepting their anger, not accepting feelings of grief and things like this, and that constant suppression and feelings of guilt that you shouldn't be able to feel these things. We do,
Yeah.
and any feeling is fine. It's just about how we navigate those feelings, which I think is a very different way of bringing up kids to how perhaps we and our generation was raised. But I think it's empowering and will improve mental health statistics.
Yes, I agree. When we see a child acting like a child, when we see a child learning how to regulate their emotions when they are 3, 4, 5, they have different skill sets. They have different access to their prefrontal cortex
Yeah.
than we do, right? We haven't mastered it in our 30s, 40s, and 50s often. They don't even have access to the same wiring, the same tools that we have, but they have an excellent memory and they're learning about who they are. And so if you tell them, wow, you're really emotional, whatever that means, or wow, you don't listen, they internalize that. Whereas if we take the opportunity to say, wow, that was really frustrating, what do you think we can do so that we can move through this? What do we want to do now? That was frustrating. I see you. I acknowledge you. What do you think we should do with that feeling instead of telling them, wow, you sure get mad a lot. We have so much power as caregivers in how we express how we see children.
For sure. And I think, children's problems don't look like big problems to us. So, if
Mm.
their ice cream falls on the floor, we say, oh, come on, that's not a big problem to all. But to them, their whole world is that ice cream in the moment, right? And if, we had bought a brand new car and smashed it, we would be devastated. And it's the same for them. But I think we lose sight of that because as adults, our world experience is a lot bigger. Our context is bigger, and we know and understand more. Like you say, our prefrontal cortex is fully developed. That's not even there for children. So it's, I think, just even giving parents that understanding that what your child's going through is totally reasonable, and it's actually going to be managed so much better if we validate them and say, yeah, that's okay. That was so annoying. You poor thing, your ice cream fell down. Where to from here? It's not about
Yeah.
chastising them for having those negative reactions.
And if you have a deeply feeling kid, I think it's interesting, you talk about, if you crashed your brand new car. If you crashed your brand new car, are you upset that this hunk of metal is gone that hopefully you have insured? Or are you upset because there was so much of an emotional buildup to saving for that vehicle? Maybe it was the vehicle that you always imagined yourself having. Maybe you imagined yourself having it because your dad had it. You know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah,
often so much more behind our upset rather than the thing that happened. And I think, like you said, if we look at the spilled ice cream, we think, well, okay, I can just replace the ice cream. But for your child, there may be so much more. There may be fear or shame, or maybe they were just really looking forward to this great moment with mom or dad at the end of the day, and they feel like they failed and they messed it up. Like there is so much more often behind the why to the emotion than we recognize. And I love tools like yours with your books to help us really kind of key into just this mindfulness and improving communication about emotions so that we can really connect deeply in those moments rather than focus on the correction of, we don't cry over spilled milk.
yeah. And I think as well with emotions and with, mental health in general, it's hidden. You can't actually see what's happening, with a physical ailment or a physical injury. If your child hurts themselves, you can see exactly what's happening. Whereas mentally, sometimes the emotion, like you're saying, doesn't match the reaction because it's not just about that small thing. There's so much that we can't actually see. So by giving kids their own understanding and their own tools to communicate, they can understand that and then communicate what's happening in their head to us. So it just, I think, yeah, makes everything clearer and even makes that communication between parent and child better.
With your books, you are giving these tools not only to parents and families, but also in classrooms and therapy rooms. Moving on to some of the other titles you have, which I think it's very clear from the titles, even what tools we're talking about. You have My Breath, My Mindful Brain, My Brain First Aid. What inspired you to really focus on my breath, my breathing, and mindfulness as tools to communicate through storytelling?
Yeah, well, I suppose so. My brain as a home is sort of like an introduction to our brain, and it touches on different strategies. But I think sometimes people can view those strategies as, not science based or not real or a bit kind of alternative and almost roll their eyes at, oh, mindfulness or oh, breathing. And,
Hmm.
my family's quite science based. My husband's a doctor. I myself did a psychology degree. And for me, there actually is scientific backing behind the benefits of breathing, behind the benefits of mindfulness. And I think that's why I wanted to create it. So with breathing, it's not just saying to kids, oh, breathing will help us feel better. It's why does breathing help us feel better? And I think a lot of adults don't realize that, we have the vagus nerve in our body. And when we deep breathe, it puts pressure on that part and that kind of relaxes your heart, your lungs, your digestive system. So it eases the physical sensations of anxiety. So I think that's been a big thing in teaching, in parenting. A lot of us just say, oh, just take 3 big breaths. And when kids are stressed, they don't want to take 3 big breaths. When they're
Hmm.
angry, they're not interested.
Yeah.
So it's teaching them when they're calm why these strategies work. And, even since really exploring it as an adult, I am more likely to employ these strategies when I feel stressed and I start using, particular types of breathing because I know why it works. And I think when we understand why a tool works, we are much more likely to use it. And same with mindfulness, it's not just about trying to look at the positive of things. It's actually bringing yourself back to the present moment. I remember seeing somewhere someone said something about how, childhood's such a magical time for us, but really it's often we look back on it as such a magical time because we were just present and we were just in the moment. We were just playing in the garden. We were really looking at flowers and leaves. Whereas adults, we're so busy in our life and we forget those moments. But those moments, just like breathing, have a physiological effect on our bodies and our minds and do help us, reduce anxiety, reduce depression. And I guess for me, it was going through that myself and having to employ those skills like a child, where I almost felt, okay, when I'm washing up the dishes, I'm going to actually look at the bubbles made in the soap suds. And it really, it works. And I guess it was me wanting to communicate why these skills work, because I'm a big believer in, empowerment through education and through understanding. And I think at the core, that's what I hope for these books. It's not just a storybook that says mindfulness is good. It's why is it good? How does it work? In the book, it talks about how when we use these things, it floods our brains with little bubbles. And the bubbles are, different, endorphins and oxytocins. And what do those things actually do for our brain? So it's trying to explain the why behind the tools that we know work.
It's so beautiful. And I love the example of you just being really present in the moment, washing dishes and focusing on the bubbles. And then the bubbles are going to be so glistening and beautiful. And then one's going to pop and it'll be gone. And I think in that moment, we can realize our anxiety is gone too. That thing that we were carrying is gone. And in part, often when we think about the worries, for example, if we start our day first off reading the news, we all know as adults now, I think most of us have encountered the research saying the worst thing we can do for ourselves is start off our day, pick up your phone and look at some news that's very, catastrophic and anxiety inducing. And as the day goes on, we are just adding more and more stress. And it's the same for our children. They have to get up. There's a structure to their time that is frankly quite unnatural for children, the stress they face in the morning. And then there's peer pressures and social issues, and there's assignments, and there's
Yeah, this constant rush,
anxiety.
isn't it? I feel like kids these
It's,
days are brought up in this. And, I'm guilty of it because
yeah,
life's busy. It's come on, boys, we got to get in the car. We're late. I'm late
yep,
to work. You're late to school. And it's this constant
yep,
rush in all of our
yep,
lives. And that's the world at the moment. But yeah, I
yeah,
think we've got to find those times to slow down because otherwise we burn out, don't we? And our kids
yeah,
explode like with emotion, and melt down.
yeah.
Yeah, like you say, I think as humans, we're not built for that constant
No.
fast pace of life.
We're not. And it's like when you think about how important sleep is and rest is, our brains need to do important work when we're resting and sleeping. If we scroll, if we say doom scroll all night on Instagram or your app of choice, and we don't sleep, not only are we adding, I imagine this kind of bucket in our head. We're just adding anxiety inducing impulse information, data. Okay, some of that was good, some of it was bad, some of it was not notable, right? But it's just this big bucket and we have to empty the bucket. But if we don't, for example, sleep, we haven't emptied the bucket in a big way. If we don't have those moments of presence, like you are promoting with mindfulness, we don't, it's almost like another, example would be like with your phone or your computer. If you just keep on opening browser tabs, it gets slowed down and nothing's working anymore. You got to delete them. You got to get rid of them. You got to keep what you only need. You need those moments where you stop, you decompress, you declutter your mind so that you can move forward. Otherwise, you are just cluttered and slowed down with all of these things that are causing this feeling of burden and anxiety, but they're not enriching you in any way. And we need to learn to let go. And so as a neurologist, I love your mindfulness approach and teaching children this because there's so much value in integrating those pauses as just a habit in your day.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, like you say, I feel like kids are actually more open to it, I think, often than adults are, men in particular, I don't think adults are as open to all of these tools and strategies because they've already developed, how they function in life. And, when things get tough, you keep going. And there's that mentality that has been perhaps drilled into a lot of us when we were kids. And it's hard to let go of those things when you've really learnt them and you've got those, those schemas and those neural pathways that this is how I function as an adult. Whereas I think that's the shift that we need and we want, that when you learn those as a child, you grow up and they're your pathways, they're your habits, they're the things that you know are good for you just at your core because that's what you were brought up with. So I guess that's the hope, that starting young and with families, it's this holistic way of delivering these skills early.
I love it. I believe so deeply in it. And, we have also a publishing house that's focused on that mission as well. So I feel in such a kindred space with you. The thing that also really, it makes me smile if anyone's watching our audio visual version and not just listening. I'm smiling as you're speaking because one of my favorite things about writing children's literature isn't just the message for kids. It's the hidden messages for parents, because when they have those aha moments and when they say, I think I need to consider doing that too. And they start practicing it and they get excited about it. That's so incredible to see them practicing mindfulness, breath
Yeah.
work. And then they're like, hey, there really is something to this. And the kiddos look it over like, well, why'd you buy me the book? Of course there's something to it, mom or dad. And it's just so fun to see them grow as a family and heal as a family.
And I think that's also the thing and the nice thing about a book, which I'm sure you would have experienced with yours. It's kind of, it enables almost societal shift because it's not just us teaching one generation, it's us giving a certain knowledge type to everyone that they explore together, like you say, and they grow together or they apply these skills together. And it's not just taught at school, it's in the home, it's by themselves when they're reading. It's all of these different little avenues that um, brings it together and gives everyone in that household that same knowledge base. So everyone at that school or classroom, they all then start to share that same knowledge base or the vocabulary or the skills. And I think that's how authentic change happens.
I love that. And it really makes me think about how your journey started. You were having, as you mentioned earlier, your mental health struggle after having your second child, coping through that, getting through what I call that messy middle. And then you have these new tools, and someone like yourself, you're not going to just keep those to yourself. You want to share them and make the world a better place. And I think it's such a beautiful story to share because there are so many stories out there and there are so many ideas out there that just need a little bit of love and time and attention and belief and self belief. So I'd love to hear more about how you had this idea, had a dream, used Kickstarter, created a campaign, and then all of a sudden there is, well, not all of a sudden, we all know who published books. It's not all of a sudden, but in a relatively short period of time, you've got the My Brain book series and you are impacting so many lives. Share with us how you, one, made that decision to commit to your idea and believe in yourself, and then what transpired after that.
Yeah, I guess, like you say, it's going through, for me, that period. I mean, growing up, I always, I suppose, had anxiety. But I think when it's low level, a lot of us don't realize the impact it has on us until I guess you hit rock bottom. And that's where I hit rock bottom. And I got to the point where I actually never thought I'd make it out. And that was a big part in wanting to share, to show people when they're in that horrible, dark space that you think, this is the end. That sometimes it's not, that you can come out the other side, and that here are the tools that helped me. And I suppose there's almost like a camaraderie when you meet someone else who's gone through a really difficult experience like that. Um, and you want to share that. And, if someone else is in that position, or if I can stop a child going into that position, that's something I want to be a part of, because it's, had a huge impact on me, on my family. And I think I almost feel like, I unveiled the answer. Like, here is a big part of the answer into overcoming mental health. And it's like, you want to share that with others, you know? And like I said, seeing it in a lower level within the classroom, and there were no tools that were packaged up in the way I wanted it. You know, I remember I would print off different websites, checklists or information to give to parents, but there was nothing I could hand over and say, here is evidence-based information packaged up in a way that you can deliver it with your child and it's complete. And I guess I was hunting. And I thought, you know what? Why don't I just write a book for the classroom? And that's how it started. It was for my own son, my eldest son, is perhaps more wired like me, quite sensitive, quite anxious. So I was doing a lot of that work for him. And then also just for my own class. So I kind of wrote it casually as a resource. And then I guess I saw the impact of it, and I shared it with my son's school, and it was just getting such a good response that I just felt like, oh, there is something more to this. So I kind of, I guess, invested the time and effort. Getting encouragement from my brother was the one who suggested a Kickstarter, because after trying to navigate the publishing world, and meeting with different publishers, it's not just a straightforward process, and you lose a lot of creative control moving with a publisher. And I guess for me, this was more than just a book. I suppose it's kind of a movement, and it's a knowledge base, and I wanted to keep control over the legitimacy around it. I wanted it to stay science evidence based, and I wanted it to be something that could be used in psychology offices, in schools as part of programs. So that's just the way it naturally evolved. And the option that moved forward was, I can't fund this myself. Let's see if we can do a Kickstarter. And like, the response to the Kickstarter was amazing, and I'm so grateful for that. And then it's just continued to develop and grow really quickly, and I'm so grateful for how quick it's been growing. Like, super challenging at times navigating it, but I think that's just been reinforcement for me that no, what I'm doing is making a difference, and I want to keep doing this. So yeah, it's kind of naturally evolved from step to step to step. And if someone had told me at the beginning, you have to do all of these things, it would have been too much, too overwhelming. But as you embark on these things, it's just piecemeal at a time, right? And then before you know it, you've created something that, like, when I look back and I think, at times this is really challenging, I think it's almost like a little legacy, like, here's something I went through and here's what I left behind because of that. And to even be able to look back and think, I'm proud that I turned this messy part of my life into something that has meaning, into a silver lining. Yeah, it's just aligns with my values, and it's something that I want to share, I suppose.
I so appreciate you sharing that. And I think it's so inspiring for people who have a project that they're dreaming of. And it's important that when we're looking back and sharing our successes, that we also mention, and there were some really tough times. And these are the bottlenecks, and these are the nights that I thought that I couldn't go on, but then there always seems to be a bridge, right? We're looking out over the water and thinking, how am I going to get from here to there? But there always is a way. And often it's through that challenge and the data that you've gotten from your prior challenges. Like you said, once you have walked on this path, all of a sudden, these aren't insurmountable challenges. You figured it out before, you will figure it out again. And again, that comes back to being at home in your brain and using the
Yes.
tools that you have and saying, okay, this is tough, but I'm tougher and I know what to do. When you think about it, what are right now the big challenges that you are feeling as it grows? And as you think about those challenges and speak it out loud, what comes to your mind about the path forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, because I guess lots of opportunities as you start to grow present to you. In the beginning, you're the little person asking everyone for opportunities, but as you start to grow, opportunities are presented, and it's about kind of, I think for me, connecting with people who are like-minded and who have the same values. So, for example, I met with a lovely lady the other day from a clinic um, that looks at providing like holistic care. So they've got pediatricians, psychologists, GPs, all part of a one practice that you can go to as a self-referral service. And they're looking to expand into schools and have an educational program that teaches about the brain. And so she approached me about using the books and being part of that. And I suppose they're the sorts of things I want to have a part of. You know, this isn't about making money necessarily, or, you know, all of these becoming well known or anything. I guess for me, I'm quite an introverted person, and I just think I would just like to help other people who have been through similar things or who might go through similar things, because it changes your view of the world, and it takes you from this state where you can't manage and you don't understand what's happening to you, but empowering others to understand. And yeah, for me, I guess the direction I want to take is moving forward with people that are aligned, that I really like, connect with. And that's what we're doing, I guess, trying to grow a business, trying to find staff to help with different avenues that you realize you need along the way. Yeah, for me, it's finding the right people who have the same visions and the same values.
Mm. That, and it's so hard when you start doing everything yourself. I have found, I'm curious to know if you also experience this, it can be hard to relinquish control over things, especially if you derive joy from them, from doing those tasks.
Yeah, it is. And it's also, you know, you care about it so much, so you will go to the nth degree and you will make sure it's dealt with properly. And it's learning to let go. Like for me, a big part of this process is, you know, now that we've expanded and we're, you know, selling books globally, you know, there's a lot of postage problems, as happen anywhere for any business. And, you know, I'm up late at night emailing customers one to one, trying to call the courier companies, and it's impossible. I can't do all of that stuff. So it's learning to let go and think, you know, this is all part of the process. We can get other people in that can help, and it's not going to be perfect. And there will be some things that don't work out perfectly, and that's okay. It's part of the process. You know, you want to, I guess for myself as well, I kind of have those perfectionistic traits where I want
Mm.
it all to go super smoothly, and I want it to, everyone to be happy and no one have anything bad to say. But at the end of the day, life is life, and there's going to be little mishaps along the way. And it's a continual journey for me too, you know, accepting that I can't do it all. Not everything can go perfectly. And you just do what you can. And yeah, for me, a big one is sticking to my values. So any decision, when I'm ever caught on something, I think, well, what do I value most? Is it being right, or is it just kindness? And usually it's okay,
Mm.
let it go, just act in a way that aligns with what you believe in life.
Mm. That's so beautiful, and it really makes me think about the moments in my life that I cherish the most. And it's those moments where you do the right thing and you pause and you lean into that. And also for me, you know, it's the impact. It's not about the number of books you sell. It's about that child that you read the book to in a group of kids, and they're the child that's being disciplined by their teacher, and their teacher is kind of looking at you like, you know, it's a little challenging with this little kiddo. They're probably not going to sit down for your presentation. Sorry. And they
Yeah, yeah,
sit and they listen and they have amazing insights and comments. And they're like 5. And they just needed to feel connected. And so these opportunities we have to connect with people as authors. And when you work in psychology, when you work in clinics, when you work like myself as a physician, when you have these really unique and sacred opportunities to connect with people and really impact them because their minds are open, because there is this, when you read a book, I believe there is a level of trust that if someone is reading your book, that they are gifting you. Just like when you go to see a physician, there is a level of trust that they're gifting you that they don't necessarily gift to every other human that they encounter. And so as authors, as physicians, as counselors, as teachers, we have to really take that responsibility and hold it with such care. And I
Yeah.
love your books really, really do that. And they're so respectful to the children that you're trying to teach, as well as the educators, to really create this common ground that's very nourishing and very science based, but also full of love and care.
Yeah. And I think we all want that as humans. I think even you look at, I know studies about longevity, often the thing that is the biggest predictor is, good relationships in your life. And I think when you look back on times in your life, whether they've been positive interactions or challenging times, the things that often stand out are those moments of connection with different people, whether it's, a teacher in your childhood that really got you, or whether it's, a doctor who really cared for you at a point where you needed it. I know during my kind of struggles, my GP, I would say, just saved me. It's just people need connection, and in a way books can allow that, can facilitate connection in a way, can give something to talk about in those times where maybe parents don't know how quite to deliver support. It's kind of, it gives them something that you can bond over and you can read together, and it can become an experience, not just a book.
And that's I think every author's goal. And when you actually create that space in your books and you see it happening, it's just electrifying. And I know that that is happening with your book. And that's why, people are wanting it to bring it into their schools and their clinics. And so I'm so grateful that you were here on Talks with Dr. Shafer to share your mission. I would love to talk about what's coming up for you now with your fifth book that's coming out soon, which here in the States, it's back to school season. So that's perfect timing.
Yeah, yeah. So we've got kind of the last book to kind of join the little collection, which is My Different Brain. I'll just show you a little. It's all about neurodiversity. And like any teacher, we all teach neurodiverse children. But I've had a couple of years in particular where I've had children with higher needs, and it was kind of inspired by, how do we explain this to other children? Because everyone needs different tools, and that's okay. And everyone's brains are a bit different, and that's okay. And it's kind of trying to teach children and parents and just share that understanding of the beauty that comes with differences and diversity. So the book kind of is just a different way of framing neurodiversity rather than a deficit, which it isn't. It's just, a different way that we're wired. So it kind of explains little differences, again, tying a science base with just a genuine difference in human nature. And, for example, I've got a busy with information brain. So that might be children who experience ADHD, because really it's not that they can't concentrate, it's that they're concentrating on everything and they can't
Hmm.
kind of hone in on one thing, right? Or children who are on the autism spectrum, they just see the world differently. And there's a lot of beauty in that as well. And
Hmm.
often children with these differences bring us so much joy because they are mindful. They do see different sides of the world or different experiences. So I think, yeah, it's a book that just embraces that and tries to um, normalize it and just, yeah, embrace everyone for who they are and teach that these differences are okay and we should, nurture them.
That's a beautiful way to wrap that up, is that we should really nurture our differences, and diversity is normal. Even the sides of our faces. I always think about this example, and I'm sure you've heard about it too, where they did a study and they showed people having the same face on both sides. And it was very dissettling for viewers, because we are not symmetrical. We ourselves are not the same from side to side. We can have quite different features because of our DNA and the way that we formed in utero. And realistically, you talked about perception earlier too, that the way we see the world is based on our life experience. And when we're teaching a group of children, everyone has a different brain, everyone has a different life experience. And just like some kids have differences the way that they see colors,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not something they chose. It's a wiring of their brain. It's the way their occipital cortex is. And so we can't pass judgment on that. We have to accommodate that. And we have to understand if I say green, green may look different to different children. We have to understand the same about behavior and emotions and the way we perceive those things. So I so appreciate you bringing this into the fold of the My Brain books, because I think it is something that we need to talk about. And I imagine you've heard here in the States, there's been more and more pushback against diversity and neurodiversity of late. And I myself, as a neurologist and as an author, having written a children's book about neurodiversity, about a young boy with pathological demand avoidance, and teaching him tools to help with emotional regulation, and also showing readers and their families how we as caregivers can step in to provide the support to help them not change as individuals, but navigate those emotions and those
Yeah. Yeah.
experiences. I so appreciate your focus on neurodiversity with this book. It's so important. And we are living in a time where there is this sense of othering seeming to increase, which in this stage, in this time of so much scientific knowledge and so much of a better understanding of the true fact that we all have our neurological differences and our health differences, our psychological differences, it can feel discouraging
Yeah.
as a parent, if you have a child with neurodiversity, as a teacher, as anyone in
And
the
I think, yeah,
community.
was a big thing for me as well. I think if you don't have experience with a child who has neurodiversity, I think there's a lack of understanding there, and there's a lack of
Mm.
awareness. And for those families, the goalposts are so different, and there's this feeling of alienation often. And I think it's just one of the purposes of this book is open up conversations around that, that people with neurodiversity don't want this shame that others are putting on it. There's nothing to be shameful for. Everything's
Yeah.
different, like I saw somewhere the other day saying, fruits are all different. It's like trying to convince an apple that it should be like an orange. It's like, you know what? We're all just different fruits. And we just embrace it. So I think it's opening up those conversations. And like when my children, if we see someone with a physical disability, for example, it's not, oh, don't talk about it. It's, yeah, we're all different. That person's legs don't work properly, so they have a wheelchair, and it's normalizing all of these different things. I think that leads to a more inclusive world where everyone feels supported and seen. And I think that's just, a world that really everyone wants to live in, where they are all okay and accepted.
Representation is so key, and having respectful, open dialogue is so important, especially starting in our young years with our children and with our students. I do have to ask, if you were a fruit, which fruit would you be?
Probably an apple. I'm pretty, standard, easygoing. I love apples myself. A people pleaser, but healthy and good for you.
I
What
love
about
it.
you? What fruit would you be?
So, not thinking about it too deeply, because I think thinking too deeply is the wrong way to approach this. Dragon fruit is what came into
Oh,
my head. I don't
wow.
know why, but I'm like, I think I would probably be a dragon fruit. I'd
Oh,
be
that's so
different.
exciting. That's
and,
amazing.
and so now we have to ask listeners, okay, so if you were, if we are just seeing ourselves, and instead of trying to make ourselves fit into the category of human, be a normal human. Okay. So like be whatever that is, which that doesn't really exist. And instead we imagine, we picture that we are in a produce department and we can be whatever fruit we want to be. And we just
Yeah.
get to celebrate being, you know, being something like a citrus that's like a little tart, but it
Yeah,
it
and
brings
that's
such
fine.
beautiful, and
Totally.
it's
Yeah,
great. Like that's what I am. I'm a citrus. So I want to
yeah.
ask readers, okay, so what fruit would you be? And leave it in
What
the
fruit would
comments.
you
We
be?
want to know, and we want to see what everyone comes up with and how different it is. Cause I think that's such a cool exercise. I'm really excited about that.
That's actually very fun. I love that.
I love it. So Dragon Fruit is going to be signing off for the evening. We are so appreciative, Orlanda, that you are here with us to share your mission and your stories. And we will link everything in the show notes. Let us know, what is the best way for listeners to connect with you, to order your books? What countries also are your books currently shipping from? And how can they follow your journey?
Yeah, so you can find, we've got an Instagram page, My Brain Books, also a website, mybrainbooks.com, and we have just kind of increased the number of countries we're shipping to. So currently that's Australia, New Zealand, the USA, UK, and Ireland. Um, but yeah, I actually, one part of this journey that I love is people who do reach out, and, I'm on customer service emails or I'm on the Instagram page, and I love hearing the ways that the books are impacting families, or just talking to people about their kids, be it neurodiverse or neurotypical. So please do reach out at any time. And if you have any questions about the books, we're there to help in any way we can.
Thank you so much again for being here. It's been so wonderful to learn more about the My Brain book series, and I'm really excited to share it also with my children because I think they're such wonderful tools and we're going to enjoy using them in our home. We have 4, so we've got 4 opportunities just in our home alone to learn these skills, and we really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shafer. Honestly, it was so lovely talking to you. And, you speak about wanting to connect with people who share the same values. And you are just so lovely and sharing, so much value with others. So I am so grateful for the opportunity to come on and talk with you and meet with you. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for having me.
Oh, thank you. The feeling is so mutual. And I feel like we could talk forever, but we're going to have to just communicate through the books. Because I know, like you told me, you are a very busy lady because you are really conquering this area of education and of children's literature. And we're here for it. We absolutely love it. Make sure you go get your books. If they're available in your country, order them. If they're not, send a message and say, hey, we'd really like it to be, because that's how we affect those changes. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you to our storytellers as well. If you haven't subscribed to the show, please do so you don't miss the exciting and inspiring upcoming guest episodes of chats like we had today, of people who have reclaimed their story and are building their most beautiful future. We want to inspire you on your journey as well. Until next time, as always, stay safe and take care. I'll talk to you soon.
Everybody's lonely, but you can hold on to